So hopefully we should be live. So Ben, welcome to your second interview by us. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
No problems. I know what you're thinking.
Yeah.
Could this chap get any better looking? And the short answer is no. So how are you, mate? You all right?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. Fighting against the workload.
Oh God, yeah. Tell me about it. I think people don't realise just how difficult it is to be a performer. It's constantly travelling, constantly.
I'm sick of seeing the inside of your car.
You're a lucky man, mate. I haven't managed to find a woman yet that can put up with the fact that I'm travelling everywhere.
I do count myself blessed, mate. I do.
But yeah, so I'm going to start this interview with a couple of questions. I'm going to start as though nobody knows you, and the reason why I'm going to start that way is because if there are people that genuinely don't know you, they'll get an insight into who you are. The people that do know you, they might just unhinge some nuggets or some information about you that they didn't know before. So the first question that I'm going to ask you, and it's a rather cliche question and one that I feel I have to ask, is where did you get into all this? Where did you start in magic, mentalism, mind reading, deduction?
Well, the magic and mentalism route started with a friend of mine. I'd always sort of had that childlike fascination with the topic, but always thought like you have to be born into one of those special kind of families that do it, and it was a very sort of secret sect that you had to, go through some hazing process to be a part of. But no, I made friends with him. His name's Phil, and he showed me my first card trick, and it spiraled out of control from there. I don't think there was a moment over like the next couple of years where I didn't have a pack of cards or a couple of coins on me and whatnot. But yeah, that's definitely where that took. And in doing that so much, I always found that I was more fascinated with people than anything else. And that sort of changed my performance head a bit, because being more fascinated with people made me think more about how they tick. It made me think more about what's going on in their head that makes them do certain things, that makes them think this way, act this way, dress. I mean, the list goes on. And then I coupled that with my genuine affection and absolute love for the work of Sherlock Holmes, and to use skills that he put forward in my work, because they're based on real techniques. It's just that he uses them for crime solving and detective work. Why can't I use them to figure out what people are thinking, figure out what people have done that day, and present it in a more entertaining light, so to speak? And that's pretty much it.
So with the deduction stuff, because I also know that you are very well grounded and based and have a lot of knowledge in mentalism and magic. Do you ever use cards or coins anymore? And do you ever perform mentalism?
Yeah, I do. I mean, it's still there's one or two definite staple parts of my close-up work that I do use cards and I do use coins, because it goes along with my particular obsession of trying to do things, as real, quote unquote, as possible. Like if I ever use cards, I'll use them to gauge reading, to read information from them, or if I'm doing a put my teeth in, a memorized deck effect, I'll actually do some memory work involved in that. Or if I'm using coins, I'll be genuinely playing the witch hand game, or turning around and pick a coin out of your pocket, and these kind of things. What actually forces me to do some actual work. Not that, sleights and mentalism effects don't need work, because they absolutely do. But what I'm talking is trying to get as I don't know what the word is I'm looking for. Trying to get as
close to genuine as possible.
Yeah, as close as I can feel like I'm actually doing it. Does that come across? Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think with stuff like this, it's interesting because you're almost putting across that you have the mentalism there as a technique should you're at a corporate event or an event where you need that to get you out of it, but you'll always try to do the real thing first.
Absolutely. See, them are the words I was trying to say. They just didn't come out of my face.
No, no, I understood. I understood it. I understood it completely. I think
Yeah.
that's what's so nice about this sort of stuff because we're sort of at the turning point in. I'm gonna I'm gonna use mentalism as a blanket term. I know it's deduction and it is different, but I hope you don't mind me using it as a blanket term for
No, not
people
at all. No, please
to
do.
sort of understand it. Um, we're at a turning point in mentalism where it's very different to how it used to be classically, and we're almost moving to the realms of doing stuff. I'm going to say for genuine, and if there was real mind reading, I think that this chapter of mind readings getting to a point now where I think people love the buzz of trying to do it for real before they rely on
I,
other techniques.
I absolutely love it. Like I say when people ask me about it, they go, "What's the difference between the two?" I was like, "Well, with magic, you put a girl into a box, you expect her to vanish. With what I'm trying to do here, it could absolutely fail. It's up to me to use my skills to engineer as most a successful outcome as possible."
And so that leads me to another question, and I'm going to try to base my questions off the answers that you give.
Okay.
Do you ever orchestrate, if you ever find that something is going too well, do you ever orchestrate a miss on purpose?
Absolutely, absolutely, because in a way it adds more to your credibility as a performer. Because to seem too perfect, it's almost like they could be thinking, "Oh, he's bought this from Toys R Us, and I could go and do it myself within 5 minutes." Ignoring all these stories that he's been doing this for years and read this book and practiced this. No, 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 no. But yeah, absolutely. If I find that whether I'm genuinely doing it or there is some kind of devious chicanery involved, if either way it's going too well, that I would use that to just bring them back down a little bit further, so that when I need to move on to another effect or another person, um, it all has different balances and different performances in the close-up,
I think
regardless of what effect the scene.
I think that something like that's nice as well, because sometimes, and I don't just mean when I use the word coincidentally, you'll have to. I'm sure as a performer you'll understand what I mean.
Yeah,
That a lot of the time you can coincidentally have such a good run,
yeah,
like your luck's just on your side that day, and I think that, like you say, a performance like that that'd normally be like, wow, this is really
yeah.
incredible, can often be ruined by the fact that it's too perfect.
Absolutely, absolutely, it can, because they can almost liken it things like that to, oh well, everybody says that. Oh well, everybody does this, and whether it is or it isn't the case, that's the way it comes across. So you have to take into account seeming to be perfect.
That's it. So we've got a flood of questions coming in, but if you don't mind, I'll ask a couple of questions first that I'm getting just off the back of your answers, like I did say a moment ago. And that just means that these questions, obviously, you didn't know what were going to be happening, you didn't know what I were going to be saying in advance. So I hope you don't think I'm trying to curveball you in any sense.
All right, okay.
Is there a time where you have completely gone to deduce something and got it completely wrong, with no outs and no anything?
Yeah, a lot of the times when because around where I live, it's one of those communities where everybody sort of knows everybody, and being as off the beaten track as what I am, so to speak, and how I think and what I do, I often get go on then, do this. What have I been? What's in my pockets? Where have I been? Where am I going? What have I done? Those kind of questions that put you on the spot, and that you secretly hope that you could just knock it out of the park, just to stick them the metaphorical finger, as it were. And but yeah, there was a time a couple of days ago actually when a guy came up to me. He was like, "I've just come back from the shops. What did I buy? I had a go. Nothing. Not a single hit." And I had to admit that while this, there are techniques in place that allow me to put some thought into it, it's got a possibility for failure, and I've just incurred more than one failure on this time.
I get you. And when you get a failure like that, and I mean, genuinely, I like a failure. I know that sounds really bad, but sometimes it's really beautiful to have one because when somebody says, "Oh, he got this from me, he guessed this from me, and he got this," and there's somebody there saying, "Well, he didn't get it with me." I think there's a real edge of beautiful realness that's created there.
Yes, it's that perfect thing again. It's that hits and misses approach, and I'm perfectly happy to go, look, that didn't work, or that failed. Never mind any, linguistics to make it seem as good as possible. I'm perfectly happy to go. I tried, I failed, I missed. Let's do this instead.
Did I ever tell you the story of there were a mentalist pickpocket? I'm not going to say what it is because it's not for me to say, but he used to put himself purposely into them scenarios where people would come up and say, "Well, go on then, pick my pocket. Go on then, do this to me. Go on, read my mind."
Yeah.
And he used to wait till there was this couple, and he'd take a deck of playing cards and he'd hold it like this, and behind it he'd have a condom. And he used to place it into a guy's pocket and say, "I'm going to try to pick this off you on the count of three," and he'd fail miserably. Right, but he'd leave the condom in the pocket.
Nice.
And he'd wait for a guy and a girl that were together.
Yeah.
And, he'd take it out, and I can't remember his exact story, but it was a really beautiful ending to the routine. Because then he'd say, "You know what, we failed at that, but would you mind if I tried reading your mind?" And he tried to predict a few things about what had happened and where this guy had been. And he said, "Have you got two?" Pretending that she wasn't there. "Have you got two girlfriends on the go at this moment in time?" And he's like, "No." And it's like, he goes, "I'm sensing that in one of your pockets, I think your left one, or maybe your right one, you've got a condom in there." And they're like, "No." And you're like, "Well, empty your pockets out, and there's this condom amongst this change." And then at the end of it, what he did was he used that as. Then he came clean, and he quickly stopped anything that were going to happen. But but at the end of it, then he used that as an analogy to prove how pickpocketing works. Is in the moments where somebody thinks something is going on here, there's something even bigger going on here.
That's very clever.
And I don't know why it's just a random tangent that my brain went off on. I'm not going to say what it is, but I thought it was such a wonderful presentational thing.
That is very cool.
When I was watching it, just to prove that them situations, if you want to come up with stuff like that, then you can just nail them. I'm going to have a look at what questions are being put on here.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, there are a few, and I don't want you to look at what these are, so you've got a heads up. Matthew Townsend has posted. Matthew's from Leeds.
Okay.
Do you know Matt at all?
Yeah.
He's asked what colour socks is he wearing. Do you know what we should do? We should count to 3 and say the answer at the same time.
Okay.
So we'll see. 1, 2, 3. Green. I went for green. He looks like a character.
He does.
But do you know what? That's a lesson in itself there. We took a chance.
Exactly. See, and I've always loved, since the very first moment I heard it, it's your saying, if you never roll the dice, you'll never get a 6.
That's it.
And it's brilliant. And it's so true.
I posted a post yesterday on my Facebook. You miss 100% of the shots that you don't take.
There you go. It's exactly right. It's exactly right.
So could you give us a quick story, if you will, about a time where you just went and you had nothing and luck was on your side, or you just noticed things that just stood out to you, but with nothing you absolutely just incredibly nailed as much as be humanly possible?
Yeah, well, there's two that spring to mind actually, but my personal favourite is a job I worked at a casino a couple of months back, and it was like a sort of a spiritual convention of people. There was psychics there, palm readers, readers, the whole shebang, like. And I'm wandering around working, and my brain's going off and looking at this, that, and the other, and I noticed one of the readers in the back. She was setting up, and she stopped me. We spoke for a bit, like she tried to read some things about me. Didn't work, so I was like, let me have a go. And we spoke for a bit, and I managed to tell her how she got there, who helped her set up, what their relationship was, how much a taxi ride cost, and what drinks she'd had while she'd been at the gig, and she was completely flabbergasted. And that was just standard observation and deductive techniques. I noticed that her shoes were wet on the way in, which means because the taxi rank doesn't park under the alcove of the casino, so she'd had to have walked in. Because she got that much equipment in, there had to have been a car, but there was no car keys around. And it went out of control from there. And she, in all fairness to the woman, she was like, look, I don't know what skills you've got, I don't know what powers you have, but that was amazing. To get that from reading a reader, as it were, was one of the biggest thumbs up you can get for me, to be honest. And then the other time was I'd just gone to the supermarket to do some of my shopping, and chatting to people as I do, and I spoke to this woman about her recent move, the fact that she left her house in a hurry. She's a single mum, going on about the party she was going to later, and she was flabbergasted. And all that started with some Cocoa Pops I noticed on her children's knee. When you say things like that out loud and then explain where the ideas come from, that's why deduction is much more appealing to me. Because explaining it as well serves that fascinating purpose of demonstrating a skill. Those are my two favourites anyway.
So to lead on from that, because there are a couple of questions, and we have a question by Scott Wells.
Yep.
This is a thing that's important, and before I ask the question, I'm gonna phrase it in a slightly different way, because in this scenario, I think if I asked you the question outright, the answer would be no.
Right.
But to understand the question, I think that the way that I'm going to ask it, it'd probably be a yes, but I'll let you answer it. So,
okay.
But let me go into depth before you do answer it. The question is, do you ever use pre-show work? Now, I assume because you deduct things, the general census of pre-show, what most people understand pre-show work to be, is wrong anyway in comparison to how it's actually done properly.
Couldn't agree more.
But by pre-show, I mean, do you ever just look out of the curtains and start looking at people and the way they're acting, maybe the things that they're drinking, start to deduce little bits there and then that you can use later on in your act, and use pre-show in that sense, as opposed to it being writing something on an imp device and using clever linguistics to reveal that piece of work? Or do you do both? I just...
In all honesty, I do both. But there's only one piece of pre-show in the imp way that I do, or I've ever done. There's only one piece that I do with that. The rest of pre-show, if I'm ever going to use it, is like in the way you just mentioned. I love the moments that I get booked for a close-up walk-around piece before and then a stage piece after, because as I'm walking through the crowds, it's everyone's thinking that he must be there performing his act. He's thinking about the next thing he's doing. He's thinking about the cards I've picked, or the city I'm thinking of, or my PIN number, or this kind of thing. So they're currently unaware that I'm picking up information about their conversations they've had on the way in, or the photos that are on their lock screen on their phone, or the way they take their coffees, depending on where I'm performing, pet names, tattoos. These are the kind of things that I take in when I'm walking. Well, it could be anything, but I'm just hypothetical. These are the things I could be taking around while I'm doing the close-up piece, and then I will absolutely bring that information up on stage. Absolutely, I will. It'd be rude not to, almost.
I think that's the best scenario to do it in if you're in a close-up environment, because what's so beautiful about a close-up environment is if you push for time and you're moving around and you ask 3 or 4 people to write something down and you only guess 1 or 2 pieces and there's still 3 pieces left there, and you say, you know what, I didn't have time to guess it now, but if I ask you at any point later on to think of a piece of information, think of the piece that you've wrote down, again, I think that's a piece of information wasted.
Yeah.
If you're going to be moving from because a lot of the time, depending on the time of the dinners and things like that, they might have you before the dinner doing a quick close-up show, and then after the dinner moving on to a stage show, depending on the time of of the event or the place that's booked you.
Yeah.
I think, like you say, it'd be a waste to not do it. So let me have a look at another question we've got, because there are a lot of questions coming in.
Wow. I'm just going to turn my light on because it's going dark on my screen.
Shall I turn mine on as well?
I just think people. It looks like I can barely see me.
Give me a second.
Hey, there we go.
Hey guys, I'm back. So let me have a look at these questions.
Go for it.
Now somebody's asked, what powers do you try to present that you have? Is it clairvoyance, psychic, psychokinesis, mentalism? What blanket term do you use to sort of describe what it is that you're doing?
I read people, and if nobody asks, then I don't go any further. It's enigmatic in that way. If somebody else asks, or if they continue like, well, what do you mean by reading people? I will demonstrate in the form of an explanation, or explain in the form of a demonstration. Either way, because in that sense, what I'm building in there is an inline. Like you got, I'm Ben. You're having a lovely evening so far. I love the shoes. I read people. To most people, they've just what? He reads people. What do you mean? Then
I think that's a beautiful line about pointing the shoes out. Just to go back to the little thing with the shoes, because I think that's a point that is such a simple point that most people have probably missed just how great a point that is. Basically, what Ben's doing there is in pointing out some attribute the person's got, whether it be a nice flashy handbag, whether it be a wedding ring, whether it be a bracelet, something that nobody else would be consciously focusing on, by saying nice shoes. By the way, I read people. What it does is it gives that moment of everybody looking down at the shoes and thinking, what is he thinking about from this pair of shoes, and why is he talking about a pair of shoes? What does it mean? So I think there's a really beautiful point there, because it almost piques people's curiosity.
Exactly. That's my main goal. I mean, if they want to ask questions, brilliant, ask away, because that then gives me credence to continue. Not that I need the credence to continue for the table, because they're all being entertained and having a great time anyway. But the fact that I've gauged their interest levels enough to ask me questions about it says to me that I'm doing a good enough job for them to be interested as well as entertained. Because a lot of the times you can have an amazing performer and they'll go, wow, how did he do that? Or it'll be a face value of questions when they start asking you about you and the personal investments you've made into it. It must be amazing. It's much deeper that way.
So there's a bigger reason for. It's not about how you're doing the things that you do, really. It's why you're doing the things that you do that counts.
Yeah, for me, anyway.
Yeah, it depends. Everybody's different, and everyone has subjective opinions on stuff like this. There's a really cool question that I've just seen, and somebody's just. So I like to ask you what they've asked me to ask it. I know we sort of touched on it a little bit.
Yeah.
If you had to say, and maybe not to mention the venues, or maybe not to mention the people that were in this, what's your worst memory of a performance? What's your worst what's your worst moment of performance for you? You told us about your best. What would be the worst?
The worst, wow. I'd probably say it was a wedding performance I had a while back, and it was my first ever gay wedding that I'd worked at, and I'm doing my thing. I'm doing my usual act and performance, and everyone's laughing and joking and having a great time. And then I'm following the times of the contract, and I go to sit down while they go and do their vows or whatever else they have to do. And I came back out. They came back out, and it just began shouting and bawling at me. why aren't you in there talking to everybody? Why aren't you in there doing what we've paid you to do? I'm thinking, because you're getting married, probably not the best time for me to be walking in there and going, hey, ignore the proposal at the front. Think of a word. And to deal with those kind of people where every fiber of your being wants to tear them a metaphorical new one, but you have to, well, I wanted to maintain as professional a level as possible, so I had to calm them down, using certain language patterns and skills that we'd picked up through talking about suggestion before, and firing triggers that I'd installed before when doing the hypno part of my set, just to calm them down, because their annoyance was so ridiculous to me anyway, clearly not to them, but to me, to have a performer going round the all the people whilst they're up there doing their vows is ridiculous. But they were more than slightly annoyed at me not being in there. That was a horrible day. It was an absolutely horrible day. I got several terrible emails from them afterwards.
I can imagine. Damn. Because sometimes you just can't please specific clients, no matter what you do, and that doesn't necessarily come down to it being your fault at all. Some people just have ridiculous expectations, almost like when you're a performer, like you're a monkey and they're the organ grinders,
Yeah, that's genuinely what it felt like. Get in this room and dance for me, kind of thing,
So I have a question that's just come in for private message. And I don't know what sort of stuff you'd get. They're saying basically, who are your favourite performers, and what material would you recommend reading on the art of mentalism?
Right. Well, my favourite performers is quite a limited bunch, to be honest, because you can't walk a mile in this side of things without being a fan of Darren Brown and what he does. You can't, in my opinion, because he's pushed boundaries and envelopes for years regarding what mentalists thought they were capable of. And then try and hold on to your ego. You came along, and I've got to be honest, mate. I'm hand on heart one of your biggest fans. I love watching you work, and I love reading your stuff, picking your brains. I think you're a bloody genius, mate. And
I'm a big fan of yours as well, which is
thank you. But yeah. So you, Atlas, Luke. I love Atlas, and I love Luke, and there's loads of people. There's loads of people that I've watched and thought, they're good, they're great, they're good at what they do. But for me, Joe, love what Joe does, and for me, there's a very sort of niche market of performers that are actually doing this kind of thing, that are actually trying to get it to as genuine performance as possible, and that's what I adore. That's what gets my adrenaline pumping. That's what I'd pay money to watch. That's where I'd travel to watch, that kind of thing,
Yeah.
As far as reading goes, I'd read everything by the people I just said.
Good answer.
Yeah, you can't go far wrong with that. But and as far as the reading of other people's work goes, I'm woefully out of touch with that, because I grew up in the performance side of things, trying to see how far my own brain could take me. You'd see the magic trailers, and you'd see adverts for this prop or this trick or this comes out. I was like, wow, that's great, but how would I do it? If I like the effect, how would I do it? And I'd go and find some other way of achieving it without reading anything. I'd see what my own brain come up with. And that's why I'm so behind, in my opinion, on a lot of what I need to be. Don't get me wrong, I've spent the last 7, 8 years trying to catch up, but there's only so much reading a guy can do in a day.
I certainly don't think you're behind, mate. I think you're carving a different path, and that's so it's different. And a lot of the time, I think that the reason why is because you have not had the same grounding as most people. And I think that without being rude to them, because a lot of them can create off the back of that, I genuinely don't think you'd be who you are now, doing what you do now. If you had read that stuff, you wouldn't have carved a different path. You might have been on some different plane.
Yeah,
I think it's a compliment more so than anything else. Another question that's just come in from a good friend of mine, Matt Chalk. He's asking, what is the difference between, he's called it deductionism, I'm just going to call it deduction,
Okay.
the difference between deduction and cold reading.
Well, again, that's a personal opinion. In my opinion, cold reading is a set of stock lines, it's a set of stock approaches. And this doesn't mean that there's a minimal set of these lines. There's hundreds and thousands of them, but they're a set of lines either way. It's how the other person makes them fit. So cold reading very much depends on the person that you're reading in front, as to how well they're going to take it, or as to how well they're going to process it or talk about you afterwards. Because I know when I first started cold reading, there was more than enough times I'd meet a couple of people that would go, well, that could apply to anyone. That could apply to everyone. That has nothing to do with me. And as soon as you get that line in a cold reading session, their attention levels drop. So to me, when doing or utilizing deductive approaches, I find that it's much more direct and much more personal in this way. Because if I'm like, my opening thing in my close-up pieces is going up to a table and introducing myself, talking about what I do, and then I'll talk about their house, and then I'll talk about the way their carpet feels, or dependent upon what I can read from them, and then the pets that are running around and how that makes them feel, why they feel this way, why they chose their pets, what the pets look like, and then eventually their names. That's cold, and that's using deduction, and then that's things that can only apply to them. And then when they take that away, they'll tell the story of this personal thing. That this guy come up to me and knew so much about me. It was direct. It couldn't be taken any other way. And even somebody watching from a skeptical angle couldn't say that I'm going to take this a different way, or that could apply to everyone. Because there's points where I'm going, you have a, I don't know, quote unquote, a Labrador. You have a Labrador sitting at home, and then they've gone yes. They either go yes or they either go no, and then I move on through that. So deduction is a much more direct way to me to get at the information necessary. It's like the way coin magicians talk about everybody walking around with their props in the pocket for them. Or the best effect you can do with a pack of cards is to borrow a pack of cards. With deduction, these people are walking around with most of my routine attached to them in some way, or most of my routine in their pockets, or most of my routine derived from their coats or their wallets or their phones, or in that way it's very much different to cold reading.
I understand that completely. And just to add to that, just in brief, before I move on to the next question, do you ever, and I know that you personally, again, I know that when you say that, it's your opinions on stuff, and he's not trying to give anybody else, he's not trying to tell anybody else what their definition is, it's just what Ben's perceived definition of it is. Do you ever use that, do you ever use cold reading ever to guide you to anything else, or do you ever slot in certain things in? Like, I mean, like I say, I'm not an expert on deduction, but do you ever use, I know you mentioned like a stock line, to probe somebody enough to get off in one direction?
Yeah.
To start reading. Okay, I'm not going to go into what your methods are and stuff like that, because it'd be rude for me to ask.
Yeah, I'm not knocking cold reading, because I used it. and I would be a world-class hypocrite if I did, because it is good. But to me, it's quality for a narrow set of purposes. To me, I'm trying to open it up a little further. Do you know? So I will absolutely, if there's something I've noticed or want to deduce about them and can't find an inline, I would absolutely use a stock line to get myself in there.
I understand that. So again, I'm just going to try to keep moving on because we are getting a whole host of questions, and I don't want to seem like I'm not. I'm trying to keep going around the same stuff, and I'm trying to get as much as I can in here. Somebody's asked what deduction looks like. So do you want to explain it, or I mean, I don't know. I can't really.
Yeah.
What does it look like?
What does it look like? Well, it looks different every time because each time I do it, I'm faced with a fresh set of information. So it changes every time I do it. For the most part, when I'm out working, and like say I'm doing it close up, for example, I will often have my introductory lines and then an introductory effect, and because that's become so routine. You know when you do an effect often enough, you can do it without thinking. It's that whole driving analogy. You just get in and go in a car when you've been driving for a while. You don't think about the keys going in the ignition or the handbrake coming off or checking the mirror. You just do it automatically. So in that sense, my first effect happens automatically. So my brain can be going off thinking about anything else that I spot on the table. And say, for example, I see a person's screensaver on their phone, and it's of a child's birthday party, and then the phone goes off, so it's gone dark again, is what I mean. I would then provide it enough time for them to forget about the fact that they've just touched their phone, and then bring this information up later, like you recently attended there was a child's party, your child, and then go into it this way.
I understand. So you put like a time delay in between.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
is there any? I know that it's just because somebody started to post like a couple of bits up. Is there any place where you can purchase your work so one could read about the stuff that you do?
Yeah, my works are available in ebook form from Alakazam, from Penguin, from Monumentalism.
I'll put Monumentalism up there. for anybody watching, Monumentalism is mine and Atlas Brookings' site. You can get all Ben's work from there. The best prices on the net.
Absolutely, they are. Absolutely.
I say that if there's anywhere that beats us, probably the best prices on the net.
But yeah, absolutely.
There.
To go back to the previous guys who mentioned how it looks, I have a couple of videos of doing it as purely as I can do it over a Skype video chat. They're on my YouTube channel.
Well, instead of leading somebody off on there, is there anything? And I don't want to curveball you if you say no. I understand. I don't want you to because I've had this happen to me before, and you're put into a predicament where you seem like you're in a double bind. You're genuinely not. Is there anything that you could do right now to show a sense of deduction? And if it's wrong, it really there's nothing riding on this. If you'd rather not, we can we don't have to.
Yeah.
But it's essential. Again, I won't lie for you. You know that. I won't ever do that for you. So.
It'd be easier if you would. Okay. Yeah. Okay. We can try something. Right. I got a good one. Let's try this, Pete. Just for a time, I shall avail you of all moral conflict. So the answers you give are in no bearing to your character whatsoever. I want you to imagine that just for a time, you are a criminal genius, and you're an evil genius.
Okay. So this is factual then.
I wasn't going to mention the Crime Watch show. But yeah, so anything you set your mind to, you're going to get away with, and you're going to get away with it scot-free. So here's the question then. if you were going to burglarize any high street store, which would it be? What would yield the most for you? Just pick one in your head.
So not say it out loud.
No, no, don't say it. Don't say it out
Okay.
loud. Then just tell me when you've got one.
Wait a second. Okay.
Yeah?
I have one.
Okay. Now, granted, in this situation, I'm faced with the slightly, you know, I know you. You know, I know you as best as I can.
Before we go any further, would you like me to write this down so that I can turn it after so that people can see that?
Yeah, go for it.
And if you miss, then it's tough, titty, but...
Yeah, sure, go for it. This is where I need to have some filler or elevator music. The good thing about the question is it forces you to go inside of yourself slightly and think about something that would yield the most for you.
Okay.
So you're on the high street.
Okay.
Your mind's at work. Have you written it down?
No, do you want me to start?
I'll cover my ears so I don't hear the pen go.
You won't be able to hear it anyway. You know what? This is going to be really...
Just give me a thumbs up when you've done it, because I can't even...
I probably spelled it wrong, but it doesn't matter. I don't have a specific... In fact, I can think of one that's close to me, but you wouldn't know it. So, do you want me to go for the specific type of shop, or what do you want me to go for?
Let's as we run down. Sorry?
I wrote what type of store it is. Okay. Craig, I'm plugging your book here. I'm using it as a rest. Go on.
Nice. Okay. So yeah, you've written down what it sells, kind of thing, yeah?
Yes. I wrote down what kind of store it is.
Okay. So we're going down the high street. Your mind's at work. It's at play. It's thinking about what would yield the most for Peter Turner. What would help him? What would make it better? What would grease the wheels? I don't think it'll be anything as obvious as painting canvases, paints, or anything like this, because there's one in the background, and that would seem a kind of an obvious choice to go for. So I don't think it'll be anything to do with that. Okay, let's say then, would it be something to do with your love for collecting guitars, or Guitar Zone, something like that?
No.
No.
But in your defence, I know that you know I like guitars, so again, just like the canvas here in the background, I purposely avoided it, so kudos on that.
Okay, cool. So, my backup guess then, and it's a bit of a shot in the dark, and I'm hoping it's a good one. It wouldn't be something to do with... I'm thinking in terms of not necessarily then of what would yield the most for you personally, like what objects physically, like you've already said, they're obvious choices. There would be something obvious to go for. So it's what would everybody want in their life to make things easier? It would be money. It would be something you could sell easily. So would it be a jewelry store?
I put diamonds, jewels.
Yes.
Oh, diamond store. And I was initially going to go with bank. I was going to go with a bank, but again, I thought, because if I point out it's going to be a bank, of course I'd like to rob a bank. So I went for the next best thing.
Jewelry. Excellent.
There is one on the high street that's close to me. Well, it's not there anymore, but it used to be.
Right. No, don't say it then. Don't. I mean, we'll come back. Yeah, we'll get. Well.
I think you'd really like this because it's got quite an ironic name, but it doesn't matter.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
We'll do that later if you want.
Yeah. We'll get back. Yeah, we'll get back to that. It's fine. We'll get back to
that. So just to run through your process there, if you don't mind, just so that the others can see this, can I sort of just backtrack and run through what it is that you went through from my perspective, and you can point out at any point if I'm sort of wrong here. You obviously knew that that I was into painting. You knew that I liked paintings, and I think, because I'm a performer, that I'm not going to make your life easy. So depending on the sort of person that you'd be questioning, if it was somebody that didn't know that you liked paintings, at that point, would your first choice have been to go? And it doesn't matter how you get to how that they like paintings. Would you have gone off on the avenue of the paintings if it had been somebody who you knew that they liked them, but they didn't know you knew?
Yeah, it all depends on how well you see that part of the question land of what would yield the most for
Right,
you.
that's it. And because there were a beautiful line that I saw, and it were almost closed question-esque.
Yeah.
In that I'm going to assume this is not paintings because there's a painting here and it'd be too obvious for somebody like you to think about. And
Yeah.
what you did was something really nice there. And it's a moment of genuine psychology in the sense that if you're ever in a live scenario and you point out that that'd be too obvious, most of the time people would then probably go against things that they personally like because then they'd go, "Oh, wait a second, this probably would be too obvious and I don't want to seem like somebody who's too obvious."
Exactly. Exactly.
So that sort of pushed me away to something that had a monetary gain.
Yeah.
Um,
It's just fishing. Not fishing really. It's just reading the situation as it goes.
yeah, and I think that's really nice. So it leads you down to that, and I know that's a very simple display. Well, it's not simple, but I mean, for you, in comparison to the things that you can do, that would be something that would be a fairly simple display. And I like the framework on that because it almost puts you in this scenario where you get to go outside of your natural boundaries. I think that's another line as well. That is, look, if you could, be remitted of
Yeah.
any crimes, what would this be?
Someone's thought about that at some point. Someone's gone, oh, do you know what? I wish it. And it's just one of those fleeting thoughts. So to have them focus on it for just a brief moment is, it can be funny, it can be dramatic, it can be anything you want it to be.
So just a quick question whilst we're on that, because I know that we share a particular love for a particular crime
Yeah.
investigation series, and I noticed you posted something today about it, and I don't know if it's something you'd like to talk about. There's a program that's come out recently called Psych. I don't know how recent, but I think it's an amazing
It
program.
only, it only ended in March.
Could you talk a little bit? And I don't want you to I don't know how much leeway we've got on this, but could you talk a little bit about why the show's so good and if it's had any influence on anything you do presentationally?
Yeah.
I know that I heard that Banachek were a consultant on that show. Whether it's true or not, I don't know.
No, I had no idea if he was involved at all. But yeah, the reason it's so fascinating to me is because here's the pivotal character of Sean, who's got this capacity for amazing observation skills, second to none, memory techniques and first-rate deductive reasoning, and in his approach, doing essentially what our small group of mentalists are trying to do. He's doing this out in the real world of Santa Barbara, but it's that powerful, it's that unbelievable that a guy can solve a crime sitting on his sofa watching the news when the police are out there doing their, I don't know at all about police work, so they're out there doing their thing and interviewing people and dusting crime. I don't know what the police do, but he's managed to solve a crime in 5 minutes using these techniques while sitting on his sofa. And the fact that he has to use something as spiritual and unbelievable as claiming to be a psychic in order to make it work just demonstrates, how well these techniques go over. The fact that they are in reach of everyday people as well, I find personally that is of great appeal, because anyone sat there watching who thinks to themselves, well, he's amazing at what he does, but there are books on this kind of thing. There are lectures on this kind of thing. There are training programs on this kind of thing. So it's making, you know, a Hollywood show about a bloody genius, but you're putting it in the laps of the people watching at home. So to me, that's a much more personal way to do it.
I think it's a good show. One of my favourite moments on that entire show is when they hook him up to a polygraph test.
Oh,
And they're like, just one more question. Are you
yeah.
genuinely a psychic? And I thought that moment were just incredible. And for anybody that doesn't know what the show is, check it out. It's called Psychic. It's an American series about a guy that the police don't believe that he's genuinely used his own intuition to solve these crimes. So he has to put on this facade of being a psychic. And all of a sudden he creates such a wonderful reputation for being able to solve these crimes psychically. The police hire him as a consultant continually to do it. It's almost like The Mentalist, but much better.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It is brilliant, and I like the flashback scenes with his father training him, as it were, because when you'd sit up and go, "I've tried to do that before," and you know, it's great to see on the TV.
You need to check it out, guys. And the two main characters, Gus and Sean, works so well together. You couldn't have found a better pair.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, so that's that. I know we went off on a random tangent there about that, but I think it's very fitting for the things that you do to mention. Yeah. So let's have a look at some other stuff on here. Somebody's put, I think it's a perfectly good question. Use deductionism to determine the colour. I think that's the meaning of the socks. We still haven't had no call back from Matthew Townsend. So let's have a look at this. I'm just scrolling through all of them to pick out the ones that are relevant to this point, so please forgive the dead time.
No worries. The shop doesn't begin with a T, does it? The jewelry store?
It does.
Okay. I'm still thinking. I'll get back to that.
But I won't be answering any more questions.
Okay.
Baz has asked, he said, I'm looking forward to Newcastle, as I'm sure you both are.
Yeah.
I think that means me and you. So this must be a meeting of the minds where me and you are lecturing together.
We are, sir. We are.
What's the date of that?
Don't let Michael you say that.
I genuinely don't know, you know. I thought I was supposed to be... When is it?
12th of July.
12th? That's why I got it mixed up. I thought we were in Italy on the 12th.
Oh.
Honestly, I got them mixed up. I'm really bad with dates and stuff. So yeah, so we're giving a lecture, and the question is, how long did it take you to structure your forthcoming lecture, and how did you decide what to include? Now, I am going to caution you to be very careful here, because I know that Baz is going to the lecture.
Yeah.
And I know that I think that all the tickets are sold out. I'm not sure. So you can't put salt in too many people's wounds. So maybe how long did it take you to create the lecture? And is there a couple of things that you could say that you're going to do in the lecture but not explain what they are?
Yeah. The lecture structure, as in all, it's my first performance stroke lecture of that kind of nature, my first ever. So I wanted to make sure it was tight and gonna stick to the points that I wanted to get across, you know, the first sort of starter points for anybody that wants to start going down this kind of road. And it was genuinely like, I think it was 3 weeks, maybe 3.5 weeks of solid everyday thinking about it in order to come up with the best possible approach for what I feel is the best sort of stuff that I want to talk about in the lecture. And some of the stuff that I plan to touch on is things like how to begin deducing with speed and accuracy, cutting down that cognitive thinking time about things, so you don't have to stand there and go, it's in how to create that ability to do it ongoing and think about multiple things at once. Memory work. I'm doing my borrowed deck, memorized deck routine, and I'm gonna go into and demonstrate the pet deductions, how to walk up to anybody cold and tell them about their pets and their pet's character, what pets they have, and then the names of the pets as well. There's a couple of things.
You're going to sneak in. I've just decided to sit and talk about life.
Nice. Well, I would have thought that when you sit down and start to talk to people, mate, everybody will listen.
Probably not, but it'd be fun. I'm going to sit and try to give everybody the meaning of life. But apparently, that isn't even what it's supposed to be. And just to clear this up whilst I'm on here, I went out on a night out and it'd been an event, and this event went absolutely incredibly. And I can't say where it is. I know that we've talked briefly about just before we came on here what it is.
Yeah.
I was out celebrating something pretty major, and I'd gone out on a night out. And Michael Murray sent me a text message saying, "What are you going to lecture?" And I were absolutely just wrecked. I was just So I picked up my phone and I'm sort of looking at it like this, and I tried to type in meetings for meeting of the minds, right? But AutoPredict changed it to the meaning of life.
Nice.
So I sent it to him, and the next morning I wake up and he's announced that my lecture is going to be about the meaning of life.
So now you've got to come up with a meaning of life, and you've got a time to do it.
I just thought leave it as what it is. I'm not even going to bother trying to top how amazing that sounds.
Mate, that's brilliant.
So to answer your question, Baz, but Ben's been working on it for weeks, and he's going to blow your socks off. Matt, come along so we can see what colour socks you're wearing when he blows them off. Let's have a look. Another question. A lot of these are questions, right? Okay. So, how do you routine your act to keep it from looking like a series of predictions?
Well, it all depends on the skill that I want to talk about. Like, if I'm doing a piece on lie detection, and I'm having people either genuinely tell me the truth or genuinely tell me a lie, there's nothing to predict about that. It's all about finding the right balance of what skills I'm trying to show, or what demonstrations I want to make people a part of, and finding how they balance and fit together. I like to change it up quite regularly. I've got a large list of close-up stuff that is always ready to go in my arsenal, and every 6 months, 8 months, I'll change it up, just for the sake of keeping my mind active and keeping me busy. It's just planning ahead of time, same as anything, really. If I was doing a series of predictions, then that would be, the wrong way to go for me personally, because once you've predicted, something once in the right and powerful way, to do it again and then again and then again would just seem to be a waste of time and a waste of their time.
And I think it also starts to lack power.
Yeah.
If you string along a series of predictions, I also, just to point out, and I'm not trying to weigh in on your stuff, but I think whenever you're doing, once you reveal one person's thoughts, or you deduce what one person's thinking, the problem is when you've done that is it proves that you can do it. So after that point, it becomes about challenging you, and that's the last thing that you want in a scenario where people have got to be honest in order for you to receive the appreciation you deserve for the skill that you're portraying. So again, I think it comes down to trying to reduce the amount of hits and put across why you're doing it and why this could be important, and imply how this could be used in real world scenarios.
Yeah.
And I think that becomes more important than the hit itself, if you know what I mean. Yeah,
absolutely I do. Absolutely I do. That's very much a similar approach to what I try and find to do when I'm out there.
Well, that's what I got from yours. I'm just one second. I'm just having a look at another couple of questions.
No problem.
So we're now on 10 o'clock. We've got about 10 minutes left, 10, 15 minutes left, and it gives people a chance to ask a couple more questions. I'm just looking through them now.
Pete.
Yep.
I had a go at the shop name.
Go on.
I had a go.
Do you want me to tell you what it is?
Yeah. We'll do it dramatically, and I'll turn the paper around in slow motion, or I'll throw it away if it's wrong.
So I'll say what it is,
Yeah.
and then you'll have to say something to get the camera back on your side, and then slowly turn it.
Okay. I'll keep it here then.
So the place was called Topsy Turvy.
Yeah. And I had a little mistake at first, but
Yes, there we go. Very nice. I hate you, Ben.
I'm not too fond of me right now either, Pete.
No, do you know what? I really, genuinely, I'm impressed about that. And anybody that's watched that, don't tell anybody how you've done it. I know I don't want you to go into how you've done it. I have one theory that I'll talk to you about after.
Okay.
But I think with that, anybody who can deduce the method from that, I'll be really impressed with just how clever it is. I think it really epitomises the very first answer that you gave to one of the questions, and understanding that it stretches it out.
Yeah.
I think that's a beautiful presentation of it, because not one person, I don't think, had ever come to how it got to that, and I'm very impressed. And I think that should go. If you've written that in the book, I would be mightily impressed.
Thank you. Thank you.
Incredible. There we go. So let's have a look at this. That was great. Really was. I'm feeling a bit annoyed that I didn't think about it first. You know, it's one of them moments where genuinely, it's one of them moments where you're just like, that's so clever. I wish that I'd have come up with that first. It's one of them moments.
Thank you.
So let's have a look at what else is going on here. I think we've exhausted a lot of the questions.
Right, okay.
Wait a second. I'm just reading a post from somebody. I think that's awesome.
Okay.
It's not pertaining to this. It's just the post below this. I just thought it was funny. It just made me chuckle. There's a lot of people that are saying great. Andy's saying great. Joaquin, I hope I'm pronouncing that's right, saying very good. Alexander Schumacher,
Right.
I hope I pronounced that right as well, is asking, how do you prevent your spectators or participants feeling challenged by your kind of performance? So basically, how would you prevent that moment of there being a challenge that's set in place?
Well, I like to think that when I perform for them, it's all about my character and how I perform what I'm doing for them. If I come across as some kind of arrogant know-it-all, they're gonna want to stick their, throw their 2 cents in. But if I come across of the fact that this is a two-person relationship thing, it's not me performing at them or performing to them, it's me performing with them. I couldn't do what I do were they not a part of it. And that's very much the feelings, the lines, and the things that come out of my work. Like with the I've made reference to it several times with the opening pet deductions in my close-up piece. One of the lines in there. Now, I wouldn't be getting such strong an image about this if you weren't kind enough to show it to me. And it's these lines that come out every now and again that encourage this reciprocal relationship of them being okay and on board and almost a sense rooting for me. Because what I like to do, and this is, the personal thing I'm quite happy that I sort of thought, that came over, is when I'm out working and something does miss, and I go, oh well, I take it humbly, like you can't win them all, or I tried and I failed, and a lot of the times when I've admitted defeat in front of them, I've shown that humble side of myself. They don't want to sort of go, you silly little man with your smug guesswork and whatnot. I've shown the sensitive side of myself to them, so those being normal human beings will help pick you back up from it. Oh, well, you know, one out of two ain't bad. 2 out of 3 ain't bad. You got this right. You got that right. And it's the reciprocal nature of the relationship of the way I perform for them.
And I think that the being the sort of person that acts modest, I always feel personally that you come across as more likable.
Yeah.
And it'll be them that will ultimately save the one thing that's important. This is the last question that's going to be asked because we are on there. Because we are on 10 past, and it just gives us a time to say our closing thoughts.
No problem.
Wait a second. Best way to get audiences currently involved. Great way to diffuse the challenge response. You've had a compliment there from Andy. I know Andy absolutely loves your work. We all do over here at FCM.
Thank you.
Let's have a look at this. So I'm going to, because there's no more questions that I can see that are visible there. Okay. I'm going to finish on a question that I think is going to be very nice because it's almost strange in asking. Where do you see yourself being in the next year? What have you got in the pipelines, and do you want to buy a painting off me?
I absolutely want to buy a painting off you. That dragon one that I saw was amazing. And,
this one's finished now.
Wow, it's brilliant work, mate. Absolutely it is. So yes, first and foremost, I want to buy some of your paintings.
I'll bring you one when I see you up at the meeting of the minds.
Cheers, mate.
I'll just give you one. I'll bring you one. Yeah. Carry on. Anyway, what do you see yourself in the future? Sorry to intrude on the.
No, don't be. No, don't be. I don't know. I never envisioned myself getting this far. To be honest, I was quite happy, perfectly content doing my own little thing. You know, doing my own little shows here, there, and everywhere. To have so many people want to talk about what I think about things is. For me, that doesn't really get any better than that. It doesn't really get any more humbling than people be interested in my opinion. That's brilliant. But pipeline projects, I've got the deduction book, the complete guideline to deducing like homes in the 21st century. That should be out next month, and that's going on general release everywhere. I've got my own piece, my own book of routines that I'm working on at the minute. And Anthony Jacquin came up with the best title for this book. Check this out. Speed Deduction. It's brilliant!
It is.
That's brilliant.
It's almost as quirky as dating on a timer.
Yeah. So I'm working on that, and now I'm working away on my bookings. Who knows, Who knows what could happen tomorrow? I only pretend at knowing what the future is. I don't actually know what it entails. I figure I'm just gonna keep working the way I'm working because I love my work. I love what I do. So that's fine for me. That is, to be honest.
And will you shave the beard off again?
I'd have to get permission first.
I'd love to see it.
Maybe one day. Well, I'll do a charity thing. I'll grow it out, and then I'll do a charity thing, and I'll get rid of everything.
There we go. So everybody, thank you for joining us on this FCM Full Circle Magic Q&A interview with Ben Cardall. Ben's been absolutely amazing, as I predicted he would be, as I deduced at the start that he'd be great. Thank you for your time, Ben. It really does mean a lot to not just me, but the people watching. Thanks for all the advice that you've given us. If you want, as I say again, Ben's products are available at any of the links that were posted on the FCM questions thread. I'm going to call it a thread, a post. If you want to go grab his stuff, grab it because it's amazing and it will knock your socks off. So, thanks, Matt, please respond with the colour of your socks.
Yeah. See ya.
Bye for now, guys.
Bye.